I welcome you all to this special edition of CITN Taxation and You, your special program, educative program, and interactive program. I welcome you all to this program. If you have someone that close to someone, tell them now to join us because we will be delving into one of the current issues in tax filing in Nigeria. You will recall last week we invited the executive chairman of Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, who delved into a lot of issues in tax filing, and we're happy that LRS chairman told us that they even beat the target set for that year. And who makes that happen? The tax practitioner or the stakeholders in this industry. I welcome you this morning. I will be your anchor for this program. I remain Adeyemi Ayodeji. I have my guest here. Before I introduce her, let me quickly go through her profile. We have here with me Mrs. Toluwalogo Odutayo, who is a partner in Deloitte, Nigeria. Toluwalogo is experienced in the provision of tax advisory and compliance in Deloitte, as well as immigration services to companies in the oil and gas sector, the fast-moving consumer goods sector, public companies, non-governmental organizations, high network individuals, local and expatriate employees, and she also involved in payroll restructuring, compensation and benefit, international assignment, just to mention but few. Mrs. Toluwalogo, I'm happy to welcome you here.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome, madam. Yes, before we go straight to the question of the day, you recall this very edition is special and it's going to be run for 3 editions. This week, next week, and the last Thursday in the month of January. Why do we have to do so? Because we are in the period of tax filing, particularly personal income tax, across state internal revenue service in Nigeria. Some internal revenue service will require tax filing by the last day of this month, and some in February, as the case may be. The topic for discussion for today, if you are just joining on, is annual tax filing returns with subnational tax authorities, rate of compliance and tax practitioners' perspective. We have Mrs. Toluwalogo with us, who is a tax practitioner that have a lot of tax returns on behalf of their clients on regular basis with tax authority. And we will be expecting her to delve into a lot of issues, particularly when it comes to relating and interacting with the state internal revenue service. Ms. Toluwalogo, you are welcome once again.
Thank you.
I'll go straight to our first question. I want you to give a general overview of the current processes of annual tax filing with subnationals compared to how it was maybe a few years ago, and what do you, if there are any challenges, I also want you to quickly mention this to them, to us. Thank you. Over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you once again for having me on this platform. Let me start by saying a big thank you to our great president, Barrister Agbeluyi, as well as every council member of CITN. And thank you, everyone, viewers, for joining this session. It's a great privilege to be on this platform. Now, let's go straight to the topic of this morning. The question is, how has the process been over time? And I must say to you that personally, I am really excited to be a Nigerian at this time, having seen the rise of and the improvement in the process of annual tax filing over a few years now. I've been in the tax practice for a number of years, and I can tell you that what we had when I started in 2004 to what we have here is a far cry difference. I remember then as a first year tax professional, when we will go to those offices across Lagos, when we go to Abeokuta, we go to different offices, we'll be carrying files and forms and all of that. And, gradually it went from the bulky forms to, oh no, you can submit the Excel. You don't have to print it out. You don't have to print all the receipts. You can imagine, and all of that. We don't have to go in folders and files. Before, we carry box folders to those offices. But then I saw the gradual move to, oh, you can just do it in an Excel sheet. Just follow this template, but you still have to come and submit. I remember the time that we will have to go very early to allow then and pick numbers, because if you don't get there early, you will see the crowd, just to file returns. And it will be tidy if you had not filed earlier and you are getting there on the 30th or 31st. I witnessed, people having to sleep there and all of that. And then to see now that you don't even have to go to the LRS offices. And I'm not talking about just Lagos, we're talking about subnationals. I've been opportune to file returns in all the 37 internal revenue services. So I've seen the improvement over time. I've seen the fact that before now, you may have to physically go to each of those offices, to understand what the filing requirement is for that year. To seeing that even as far back as October, we started receiving emails from various internal revenue services saying ahead of filing in January 2025, or as the case may be over the course of the years, these are the requirements expected of us. In fact, I received an email, I think about 3 weeks ago, from one internal revenue service. It was really profound, where they even gave us, they attached the emails. They said, just in case you are finding it difficult to download the templates from our website, this is the website, this is it. And they put, like a template, a sample name and all of that, so that you can just download that in Save As. That's all you need, and put your own information. So it's really interesting. To answer your question directly, we have seen the process improve. And maybe let me step back and just explain the process. What exactly are we doing? We are talking about tax filing of the annual returns. And it's accordance to our law, Section 81 of our Personal Income Tax Act as amended, provides that every employer, shows the return of what you have paid for your employees for the last preceding year. And it must be done by 31st of the month, the first month of the year. So, meaning that by 31st of January, every employer is to prepare a schedule of all that was paid for their employees and the taxes paid, and submit same to the relevant revenue authority. Now, when you say relevant revenue authority, what do you mean? It means that the state where your employees reside in. So, case in point, your office is in Akwa Ibom, but you have employees who stay in Delta State, the neighboring states. What it means is that you're not just going to say, my office is Akwa Ibom or my office is Lagos. Some people actually stay in Mowe, which is Ogun State. That means that you need to get the information of where your employees stay, just in case some stay even in Oyo State. And this is more prevalent for companies who have employees across the federation. What it means is that you're not just going to stay at the headquarters and say you're filing your annual returns. You are going to have to prepare schedules of where your employees are, what you paid them, and the taxes you paid. It is expected that those taxes, because they are employee taxes, it's pay as you earn. It should have been paid to the relevant tax authority where those employees reside. So, meaning that for each of those states, you prepare the schedule, or in the description given, in the prescription communicated by such internal revenue services, and then file those returns. So that's what we are talking about here for 31st January. Of course, because we're talking about subnationals, We also have other returns, the one you mentioned when we started this program. That's the individual filing. That's for each of us as individuals. And we're supposed to file that returns by 90 days after the preceding year. So meaning I need to file you need to file your returns by 31st March. But what we are doing now is the employer returns, the annual tax returns for the employer. What we do in March or not before March, you don't have to wait to March. If you have all your information now, you can go ahead to file your returns. Is a return of your income, your allowances, your reliefs. You don't need to do any calculation. It's just to state that this is the income, this is the allowances that I earned during the preceding year. And in most of the requirements of the states, they will expect that you also put a projection of the income you are earning in the current year in those returns. So that is what it entails. And to come back to the actual question is to say we have seen a very significant improvement. The chairman of LRS was on this program last week and was talking that the improvement, in fact, he was saying about 95% for Lagos State. Yes, I think it's almost same for a lot of the states. Some states may not have reached the 90% bracket, but there has been a lot of improvements over the course of the year, and the ease of the movement. And I'm sure you'll say, ask me other questions around technology, so I'll delve into that there. But to say that the process has improved, and I think that's a step in the right direction.
Thank you very much. If you are just joining us, the topic for today is annual tax filing returns with subnational tax authorities, rate of compliance, and tax practitioners' perspective. You recall that last week, LRS chairman explained a lot of processes in terms of electronic filing, in terms of digital involvement that make tax collection easy, more easier for them. And you just attest to it that you've seen a lot of remarkable improvement, particularly moving away from manual tax filing to electronic tax filing, where you don't have to start going very early or sleep overnight before you are able to file for your client, because I know that there will even be penalty for not filing as at when due. So who take that responsibility when you have to be there 2-3 days before you do the tax filing? So the remarkable improvement is a way to go, and they should continue to improve. Please tell someone close to you who are here to join. To join now, we are moving to train, and we just commence this program. I will quickly move to my next question, which is also around technological advancement. But let me put it this way. Is there any specific technological advancement or tools, including personnel, being utilized by subnational authority that have improved the annual tax filing process?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayodeji. Yes, there are a number of the states have moved from, like I said, the paper form to, we've seen first, it's an email address that you have to send the returns to. I remember especially during COVID, when it was almost going to be impossible for us to go and file some returns, and then having to call some internal revenue services to say, so how do we file returns this period? And then, that COVID, I think, was one of the things that really boosted, even though it has always been in the works that, we do use technology and all of that. But when COVID came, everybody realized that, we have to do something way better. So we've seen different internal revenue services come up with various platforms, on which you can then go now to file returns. It will interest you to know, I did a statistics. In 2002, we had about 10 states that were online. We had a little bit of challenges with some of them, even though the online platform was there, but it wasn't really working well. So maybe they will say eventually that, okay, just do an email, send to this customized email. Okay. And states, subnationals have also done very well in like creating customized emails. So it's not just email of an officer.
No.
Customized email info at something maybe Enugu State Internal Revenue Service .gov.ng or something like that. We saw some states come up with that, but we saw some states actually go fully online, where you will go on the platform. It's a self-service portal and you click. The interfaces are different from state to state. We see some similarities. We say, oh, okay, maybe this state and this state use the same developer or something. And I saw that there was an improvement in 2023. We saw about additional 2 join. And it's interesting to know, when I did my last count for this 2024, we've seen about 4 more states join on the online platform. Of course, some of them immediately saying that maybe we'll have a parallel run. We have states that will not take any form of Excel or email or paper manual returns any longer. Some is fully online. Some will still like allow parallel, just in case the platform is not responding. You can send it to this email. So what I would say to answer that question is, yes, we've seen a lot of technology brought in with a lot of e-portals, self-service portals, where you will go simply with your either payer ID or TIN. Some states call it taxpayer identification, some call it payer ID, like Lagos State, for example. You would have done your pre-registration before then. So first, there's a step of first ensuring that all your employees have their payer IDs or tax identification numbers. It would be good that we have done that. In fact, we usually advise our client to immediately do that as the employee is coming into your employ. So, or your current employee, just make sure everybody has their payer ID. I know that was a very excellent task for a lot of companies. It was, especially when some states, especially Lagos State, insisted that for you to file the returns, you must have your payer ID. I'll quickly come to the advantage of everyone having the payer ID. But it starts with that process. And that process may involve, you will need your BVN number or NIN number or something to be able to generate that identification number. Then, when you have that, you now prepare all the income. You will specify individuals' payer IDs, and then you prepare it in a schedule and then upload. Now, let me quickly say at this point that it is very important that we do not think, especially for organizations who have employees across the nation, do not think that the platform of Enugu State is the same thing as the platform of Kwara State Internal Revenue Service. Okay. So it is very important that we download it and have interface with it, with those platforms, before it becomes too close to the filing deadline. So because we've seen times where people will now call us and say, why am I not able to reach these platforms? Unfortunately, it's because you have done, maybe the person at the head office has just done an Excel of this is what Lagos State will require. So the parameters are different. Yes, and then think that will work for every. Let me give a case in point. I was looking at the requirements of one of the states. The one I told you sent me the Excel sheet for our client, and I saw that it's completely different from so many other states. That particular platform required that even put development levy, NHF, NSITF, and all of that. We may come to whether all that information is necessary for filing returns, but the truth is that Section 81 doesn't specifically say these are the information you require. It just says that according to what the tax authority specified. Okay. So if Ogun State say, I need this, another state may not want that. Or if another state wants a particular information, Lagos State may not require that. So it is very important so that we don't say, oh, even using the interface is a challenge. It's that the challenge, especially for those of us who are big multinationals, is just to dedicate some time or some of our personnel to run through the platforms. And where they do not have clear understanding of what is still required, to reach out to those internal revenue services. And they are always very ready to help. In fact, in improving the process, what I've seen a lot of the Internal Revenue Services do is to have specified desks for such questions and all of that. Maybe the challenge we have sometimes is you are unable to reach them because it's already very close to the deadline. And then a lot of people are calling them, or they don't even want to see anybody at that time. So it would be good that maybe just before we close for the year, we want to file in December or November, we try to reach out to those offices to know what the requirements are, because you have just 31 days. Remember, you're going to pay salary in December. And part of the information that you're required for your filing is January to December. So December is included. Okay. So you can imagine people already want to shut down for the year. So before you do all that consolidation, computation, ensure that the taxes you have paid by the time you consolidate for the 12 months, or and some we have bonuses, have this, have all of that included, to ensure that you have all the receipts, you have the receipts numbers, and then you now put it into the template that is requested for or required by all the Internal Revenue Services. Then for some, Dr. Ayodeji, it's very easy just to download, upload your own Excel on it. But unfortunately for some, you still have to download the CSV file and put your information in their own before it accepts it. So all of those things should be tested before the time. And of course, even though we are saying online and all of that, we still have a lot of states who are still manual. Yeah, we still have a lot of states who are still manual, whom you still have to physically go to those offices. Some have made it easier. I remember especially when there was a lot of, challenges of security in the north, there were concerns, and taxpayers raised concerns that, oh, how do we achieve this? So what a lot of multinationals did is to designate one of their staff in those offices. So when they have prepared the returns in head office, they try to get it across them so that those ones will then go physically to those offices. However, the Internal Revenue Services also heard that cry. And what a lot of them do is to say, okay, you can send by registered post or by designated emails, like I said. But I think what would be very useful and that would make it almost uniform is if we have online platforms available for everyone. I think for the ease of even the tax authority collating the documents and all of that too, it may make the process a whole lot easier, because you have already given a template that you want. Not that this person does their own in PowerPoint, this person does their own in Word, this person uses this Excel, and then you are finding it difficult to collate all of it together. So yes, we've seen a lot of technological change, and we only hope that it will continue even for the other subnationals who are yet to come on board.
Thank you very much. If you are just joining us, you see our guest giving us the analysis of how tax filing, is being done. And one of the very important things I picked from you is that tax practitioner must make sure they visit those websites, understand the platform, relate with platform, and ensure that you prepare your document before the filing date. It is very, very germane that our tax practitioner also visit those websites from time to time. That will lead me to next question, because we talk about rate of compliance. Most of the time, we always refer to practitioners, organizations, and firms, as the case may be. But at this point, we should also need to start assessing the rate of compliance from the tax authority. Even though they have the law guiding their operations, how fair are they with the law? How because I understand some of them sometimes use best of judgment to do certain things, and you have a lot of your clients across the federation, how do you rate the compliance of tax authority in this scenario?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So I guess the question is, is our law robust enough to even show us exactly what is required? Like I said earlier, what the law specifically says, that act says is a return that shows your income, the income you paid on behalf of your employees. We then have various states. As we know, various states have their enactments and laws that then goes further to specify some other information. So, and then the Internal Revenue Services in those states will pick their own laws also, or their own enactments, and then want to follow it through. So sometimes the challenge we have is when we say, but this is not in the principal act, you know, and then you expect, for example, development levy. In a lot of the state, the development levy is not the same. In some states, it's 2,000 naira. In some states, it's 100 naira. In some states, it's 1,000 naira. In some states, it's in 5,000 naira. And then you will see the states wanting to really ensure that organizations pay that. So sometimes that gives organizations, you know, issues. So, but on the part of tax authority, in fairness, they try to stick to this is it. And sometimes we've had to engage to say, what exactly do we want? Are we working towards? We're working towards ensuring that employers have remitted what they withheld from employees. Exactly. If that's the whole essence, what, you know, sometimes you say, what's the spirit behind the law? Okay. We want a return, because sometimes even as an employees, we are unable to go and meet our HR director to say, sir, give me evidence that the taxes you withheld from me, you actually remitted it. Exactly. So this is like a level playing field to say, you, the employer, who are the agents of government, and you have helped us in withholding, just give us a return to say, for last year, this is the income I paid my people, and this is the taxes I withheld on them. That's the whole essence. So that's why sometimes, to answer that question, when tax authorities now ask for some other information, you begin to wonder if that is in line with the principal essence of that law, or if it is already going out of, you know, tangent. But having engaged over the years, I've also come to understand sometimes why they also put those things in place. Yeah. As we all know, especially because the compliance of individual filing is still very low. So it is the organizations that tax authorities are able to get to ensure that people are actually paying taxes. So, or to ensure that they gather enough data to even say how many taxpayers are in these states. So it is an opportunity to get all the other information that we should have gotten directly from the individuals, but it's difficult for us to get it, maybe because of infrastructure, data, capacity, and all of that. So the opportunity is there so sometimes like the employer now has to get all those information. Of course, we've heard our clients say, but that is your own work. However, we've seen why some states do that. Okay. So, but the maybe where I would then say is, rather than penalize us if we don't do that, there's already a penalty for not filing. 500,000 for the period for when you do not file your returns as an employer. So if it's the only reason why we couldn't file is because you're asking for so many other information, or we've provided the one that we think is the principal, and it is just all this other information that is now making us look like we are not complying. So maybe it's that understanding that both from tax payer and tax administrator, we need to come to a middle ground. Yes, we want this information. Must we submit this information when we are all I'm doing is annual returns? Now, I mentioned something earlier about why states are also insisting on identification or identifier. I'll tell you why. Now in Lagos State, for example, where the process has been so modernized and you need your payer ID, guess what? When you want to file your own individual returns, because your organization has already stated your payer ID when they were filing their own returns, by the time you go on your own platform, because you are using that same identifier, you just realize that it has already populated the income and the taxes paid by your employee into that portal. It has synced it. So that's why. So individually, all you then need to do is all your other income that you will input into it. Okay. And now it's so good that you can even just from your table like that generate your tax clearance certificate. You don't even need to go and meet anybody because you submitted your payer ID. So any other income, you have also recognized it and maybe paid the taxes and uploaded the evidence of payment. And so it is easy. I'm sure all of us would like to get to that level. Yeah. But in the process of getting to that level, let's also not forget that depending on the state, depending on, even when you go to the states, depending on the area where our people live in, the ability to use such technology to go online to file returns, it's not the same across the nation. So that's why it's also an appeal that once we have compiled, or once taxpayers have complied with the principal reason for the return, and maybe tax authority should accept that rather than penalize us for, I didn't bring my landlord's rent, evidence that he paid withholding taxes on rent. Yeah, because some states even ask for that. Yeah, so if we can settle that the principal one is being done, when we now get to, maybe you now need a tax clearance certificate individually, then you must bring all those other information. But like I said, sometimes it's because data is also not available that tax authority try to go to that length. So yes, they also comply. They know what to do. A lot of the Internal Revenue Services, in fairness, now send out circulations. Apart from going on their website, if you go to their state, you see billboards, even on national TV. Yeah, if you're watching channels, watching Arise, you just see a state announce that, oh, it's that time of the year, file your returns. If you go on their website, if you go on their various platforms, you will see the notification. In fact, some of the requirements that you need, just go there, you will see. For example, I was looking at one of the state's Internal Revenue Services website. Once you go on the portal, immediately a prompt will just come and show you the filing is something days time, like a countdown, and these are the things you require. That's so interesting, so, and we didn't have that like 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. So yes, so I hope that answers that question.
Thank you very much. Before we move to the next question, if you have contributions, you may drop it in the chat box. We will read it out. And if you also want to ask 1 or 2 questions or contribute, you can also signify by raising up your hand through that very medium. We will recognize you and will allow you to ask your question. Madam Toluwalogo, I'll quickly go to the next question, because in everything we do, we must give room for collaboration.
Yeah.
And this leads me to my next question. In what area do you think that tax practitioners and tax authorities, particularly at subnationals level, should collaborate to make sure that we have a win-win situation, as the case may be?
Okay, thank you. I will answer that question or bring in a part B to that question in my response. Okay. The first is, how should tax practitioners / taxpayers collaborate with tax authority?
Okay.
Like I mentioned earlier, I think the very first is engagement during the course of the year. Stakeholders engagement during the course of the year, and not waiting till when filing is really very close. Okay. So during the course of the year, we maybe by February or April, we can engage and say, see, this was a challenge we faced in getting this done. We want to comply, but these challenges are there. For example, you won't believe it that we still have issues with the perception of some employees thinking that once you say you want to help me generate my payer ID and you're asking for BVN, you want to take my money. Okay. So they are not giving their employees a BVN to be able to generate payer ID for them. And in the real sense of it, it is everyone's responsibility to get your tax identification number. It's not even that of the employer, but the employer has taken upon themselves because the tax authority will see them first, and they have been appointed as agents of government for this purpose. So that engagement to say, this is a challenge we are having. So maybe this sensitization, sometimes maybe when the tax authority, there's a forum, it doesn't even have to be by company, maybe using the associations, bankers forum, all of that, to sensitize everyone to say, this is why we're doing this. We just want to ensure that, like we are all asking and saying, part of the canon of taxation is accountability.
Yes.
To be able to say, okay, yes, indeed, employers are remitting these taxes. And after we have ensured that, to then be on the other parts of the tax authority to also tell us, or the government also tell us, that indeed these taxes that have been remitted are being utilized effectively to improve our nation. So I think that stakeholders forum, that openness, on both sides, to say these are our challenges, and the tax payers authority also saying, this is why we need this information. It's not to enchant anybody, it's not to, do anything. And then maybe at such forums also, tax authority can further, encourage, and not only encourage, satisfy the concern of some taxpayers to say, your information is being gathered, it's not subject to being left anyhow. The platforms we are using, we are doing constant check. There's cyber security information that we are doing audit to ensure that your data is not just all over the place, because sometimes that's a concern of taxpayers, both practitioners and taxpayers, to say all this information we are giving the details of our people's names, phone numbers, BVN, every information, and we know what is out there. So such forums will help to create, that trust that indeed our information is secured. One, two, this is what this process is to achieve, and then this is what all of us as a nation. And then now we're talking subnational. This is how we can improve our states, so that we can do better things for our children coming behind us. So stakeholders engagement, constant, and then another thing is to ease the process of tax audit. So if we also know that one of the major reasons why tax returns is important is when it then comes to tax audit exercises. Even though the tax authority will still say, give us your payroll for the year, already there's a summary that shows this is the total income per person and this is the taxes. So it already eases what we need with getting information during tax audit exercise. It speeds up tax audit exercises. And then it shows clearly, if you say this is the returns that you filed, this is what you declared. And by the time we now cross-check with other information, we say, why is it not tallying? But if it already tallies, we've moved a step further in that process. So that also helps that. Now, I also said I will put a part B, because I think that's major concern, especially of multinationals who have tax employees across the nation. Is harmonization amongst tax authorities. I mentioned something earlier, that you find out that the requirement per state even differs. And so sometimes that already puts a lot of pressure on HR department, on the tax manager department of these organizations, almost disrupting their own normal work. Is because this state is asking for this, or they add movement during the year. Unfortunately, we are not yet at the point where everything is harmonized. Why is it not so harmonized? Because these are some of the points we have raised, that I can file returns just once, but in the return, we have developed a template, maybe in conjunction with JTB, to then show that this is the state I am in, so that it is just one single platform, and then everybody gets the information that is required. Of course, you remember the question, the topic, one of the issues raised last time is we don't even have a unique identifier. So that may be a process that is long, but we can start it. Because there was a time, like it was said last week, that there was that effort. We're even hearing the announcement that we all now have a JTB number. Exactly. For example, someone like me, I have a JTB number. I used to live in Abuja, so I had tax identification then in Abuja. Now I'm in Lagos, I have payer ID. So I still have my JTB card because we were told then that everybody will eventually get the JTB card and everything is synchronized. I can file one returns and know that I'm not stressing, because what organizations do now is that they now have to do apportionment in case somebody was in Oyo State for 3 months and then it was transferred to Zamfara State, and then for another 3 months then it was transferred. So they have to file returns for that person, include that person's name in those 3 states or 2 states, or as the case may be. Now apportioning is what's it called, return, and ensuring that his taxes are paid correctly to those states. So maybe if we have some harmonization, it can make the process simpler and people can comply more. And the information that we need to move the country forward or to help us during tax audit exercises, we can get it. Also, it can ease the process of tax clearance certificates, where the person now is unable to get tax clearance certificate because you went through it, and then one state is saying, because I don't have your information for a period of time, I cannot give you tax clearance certificate. So yes.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Oluwalogo. You have indirectly answered Onitilo Muritala Mohammed, who is just asking, can JTB design a uniform form for filing annual tax return? You have technically answered that question. Yeah. I also believe the ongoing tax reform will also address some of these harmonization and uniformity in tax filing. Let's just hope and see what will come out at the end of the day, yes, so that the tax filing can become easier and robust for everybody. Let me quickly go to our participants to ask just 1 or 2 questions, or to also contribute. I have Adelani Chinuke. Please unmute yourself while
Hello, good morning, Madam Oluwalogo.
Good morning, you're welcome, Madam.
Good everybody on board. Please, my question goes to what you just clarified on the trust between the employer and the employees when it comes to giving out the BVA. So in this case, and in fact, I'm making reference to Lagos State. If you need to file in the return, and eventually maybe you have remitted for those that you are able to get their BVN, or peradventure you've remitted for all the staff deducted, right? But in filing of the end of the year, it has to go with the payer's identification number. So, and later on they will come for audit. So how do you balance that challenges? What do you see around it? I don't know.
Okay. Do you want me to go?
Okay.
Take the other?
Yes. Do we still have the other participant? I think it's no longer there. So you can quickly respond to Mrs. Adelani.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Adelani. And I can identify with you on that question. In fact, Lagos State that you have specifically mentioned even tried to assist organizations by, I think 2 years ago or last year, they even made it that if you have up to a percentage of people who have their PID, the form will go. But of course, this year they said it has to be 100%. I think last year they raised it to like, if you have 80% who have their PID, we will allow the form to go. Okay. But I think now it's 100%, so we need to get those PIDs. Now, one of the things that we have done is to say, okay, if you are not trusting HR or your employer to hold your BVN, what we then do is to say, let's get someone, an external party, maybe your consultant, to come into a room in your office, set it up, or get tax authority. It's just that now it's very close to the filing deadline. They may not be able to spare those kind of resources now. Get them to come into a designated room and open the platform and say, oh yeah, put your PID. They are not looking at it. And then generate the PID.
That's another
Another way of doing it, which we did with a lot of our own clients, is to call the employees into a room or even via Zoom and say, we are taking you through the process. So we did a slide, we did a demo, and then said, this is how to generate your PID, because you can generate your PID yourself. It's because people are not doing it, the employers who need it, otherwise they will have to pay the liability. have to do it for their employees. So we say this is the demo. Somebody is in the room, or somebody, all of you just join this Zoom meeting, and then we start. Go to this page. Are you on the platform? Yes. Type this, type in your pay ID. You are doing it on your own laptop or on your phone. And then you put in and generate the pay ID yourself. Or even on those platforms, some of them, you will have the link. And then you will have, once you go on that site, you will see somebody, it comes up, that AI bot that comes up and say, how can we help you? Sometimes when you even chat with those people, they are able to, and then you type in the information. So Mrs. Adelani, Madam Adelani, I think we can encourage our people. I know we've been on this for, I think since 2 years ago that Lagos insisted on the PIDs. We can still encourage our people to do that. Yeah, I know organizations who said, if you do not do it, you don't need to give me your PID, but they circulated the demo to say, this is how you can go online yourself and generate these payer IDs. And then it will now give you a time. If you don't, we will withhold this allowance from you. Some organizations did that, and people quickly did that thing. Or we were sure, because it can affect the organization as a whole.
Exactly.
I also know in some states what they did was to say you even have to come for biometrics. Yeah, so you have to come for biometrics in some states. Each employee has to come for biometrics. So it's just the organizations then said, okay, we'll create this room, let the tax official come to set up, or in their own office. So everyone on this day, you'll be given time off, go to this place and do this thing. So in that case, you're not giving it to us as the employer. You're dealing directly with the tax authority. But then let me just quickly say it here that even though we know there is cyber fraud, there is everything, I think employees should come up to that stage of having a trust. I know that maybe the trust was broken somewhere, or we just have this perception that once you have my BVN, I think it takes more than that to do any crime. So maybe that will help somebody to know that let's do what we need to do. They are only supporting us to get our pay ID. Where we are all going to go to eventually is that individually, if you need tax line, if you need anything, you do it on your own, at the comfort of your home, on your phone or otherwise. Yeah. I hope that answered that question.
Thank you very much. We'll get to that level where that level of confidence will be reposed on the employer. So we'll get to that level. Mr. Olaitan Olaleye, if you are there, please unmute yourself while I want Dr. Bukar to be ready. Mr. Olaitan, over to you in 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you, coordinator and madam, for this session. My question is this: is that the issue of tax returns is a couple of what happened from January to December. Yeah. But most time, let's say for example, not even for example, most companies that have financial challenge, maybe delay in payment or up payment, or maybe one way or the other, they close down for a while. And notification is given to LRS, State Internal Revenue. And by the time the annual return comes and you filing, you find out that they always reject it. Or sometimes when you do it, the system will not recognize whatever you have done. And the most important is that when you go there to report, most time, I believe the attitude of the officers sometimes is very disturbing, maybe because of their schedule or whatever. And you notice that some of them don't even grab what you are saying. Or is it that they are not really well informed in that line? Because like you said, tax issue should be friendly. They should also, they all have an account officer attached to most of these companies. You understand? But most time the cooperation from them, because at the end of the day, I find out that many companies are stuck in this annual return because of one reason or the other. So I think I don't know if madam can just dwell on that. So how do you handle something of that nature?
Okay. I think I want you to respond to him before we allow Dr. Bukar to comment, so that we don't lose track of his question. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lale. So yes, I perfectly understand what you're talking about when for one reason or the other, things happen, and then you are still trying to do your consolidation, and there's an issue and all of that. Honestly, like I said earlier, maybe because I've worked with a lot of this tax authority over the years, I know, especially if it is this period, this January, especially this second half of January, that you're trying to have that engagement. It's a period where a lot of people are calling them and asking questions. Some are still trying to generate payer ID. Some are trying to log on. It's not coming on. So there is usually a lot, and I understand that. However, I've seen engagement when it is not this tight, and how it's easy it is to engage for the most part. So maybe what I will suggest is, if you can identify all these issues and then do a proper email or letter to say, these are the challenges we are having. We have attempted to do this, but we are having this hiccup in finalizing our filing, you know, and all of that. And also, even if you have to file based on the information you have now, there is room to refile. So if you have to file based on the information that is already available and the taxes you have paid, you can then write thereafter, after we have now had opportunity of engaging properly, to say, even the law permits that you can, you know, file if you had incomplete report, or you even found out some information afterwards that you now want to include. And then LRS, whichever state, will give that opportunity to refile returns. We make mistakes sometimes, and sometimes some information are just not complete, and you don't want to miss the timing, the deadline. So that's the other option I can suggest. First, even though it is this period, we can still engage your account officer to say this is it. Now, if the account officer is not giving you enough time, especially in states like Lagos, I know all other states too, since we are talking subnational, have those platforms. They have designated desk for some of these responses. When it comes to maybe technology challenges and all that, they have designated team for that. So your account officer may not be able to answer that, but that designated officer or team will be able to help. Of course, they are usually busy, but depending if we're able to go there or send an email and all of that, most times they do. But like I mentioned earlier, if all that still didn't work, then file based on what you have. Then do that engagement and get the opportunity to refile your return.
Thank you very much. We are gradually coming to the closing section of this program. But I will allow Dr. Bukka. Dr. Bukka, please unmute yourself and ask your question, and very briefly, 1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Presenter, for taking us through. I have some couple of questions. One, pertaining the tax identifier, or maybe the payer ID. I think if we really want to get it right in this country, is for us to have a kind of a national insurance number or something, you know, a unique number that even before you get employed, you must have to have that ID or that number. So that number can be used to assess taxpayers even before getting employment. I think that is very key, because in other developed countries, like in the UK, for instance, you can't even get a job without the national insurance number, for instance. Then also data bank. Data bank is also very key, and I don't think in this country we have a data bank, you know, a kind of a national data bank that every individual, every citizen is being captured to within that data framework. I think if we really want to get it right, you know, those things are very, very important. Then also pertaining the engagement, especially at the subnationals. Yes, engagement is very key for us to enhance the revenue profiles of, especially at the subnational levels. But I think engaging getting the indigent, especially for them to enlighten taxpayers is very, very key, especially using their local languages. Especially, in this part of the country, like in the north, for instance, a lot of people don't even know about this, the importance of tax payment or taxes. So, and how do you get it done is by having the indigents, that is, communicating with them with the local language. So that's very, very key. So I think if that is done, I think things will improve. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Dr. Ayodele,
yes,
could I quickly answer that question? Thank you, Dr. Bukta. I agree with you, and we hope that we can get there. Yeah, and I to make comments on the sensitization, I've seen that done by some, especially in the north, where they go, meet with the market leaders and all that, and use the opportunity to talk about this is how you can pay your taxes, this is how you should pay, this is how you file returns, and I think that will help. But I really want to encourage our northern IRSs. We still have a very few that are online in that part of our country. Though I know that the question is also that they know the populace of the country. How do they have access to being able to file online? But I think we can start getting there. Now that question on, is there a way those returns must be filed? Must it be physical? Yes. Doctor, what I would say is that I saw Anambra by your name. Anambra is actually online. In fact, Anambra is so tedious. You need to get another IBM.
That is your response to Dr. Lady.
Yes, that's
Ifoma,
right. Yeah, Dr. Ifoma. Okay. Because I saw Anambra. Anambra is actually, it is only when you have tried and if that they would accept, in fact, they would frown to collect physical from you. So, but we are now encouraging IRSs who are still physical. Like I said, my last count, I think we have just about 14 or 16 that are online. So out of 37, so we really need to come on board so that it's easier for everyone. But yes, there are ways to file without having online, without having to go. Or some have designated emails that they will say you should send it to in a particular format or using CD-ROM or any other thing they want.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Toluwalogo. It's been a very wonderful and educative section. We appreciate you for coming, and we will encourage you to be part of this program. It's a special edition. Another edition is coming up next week, Thursday, where we'll bring one of the executive chairmen of the State Internal Revenue Service, and some of these questions will also be posed, to them, in these areas where we have raised issue today. Mr. Toluwalogo, we appreciate you for coming, and the 16th president of our Grace Institute, appreciate you for coming. And on this note, okay, before I draw the curtain, I wish to quickly let you know that the program of the Institute, the annual task conference, the 27th edition, is going to take place on May 12 to 16, 2025, and we have the venue now. The venue is Abuja Chambers of Commerce and Industry. I'll start the registration now. Our portal is open, and you will not want to miss this very 27th edition of our task conference. And we also have our induction taking place in Abuja for the first time. If you have someone and you know someone that is qualified to be our member, pass the information across, let them join the train. Taxation is the only language speaking everywhere in the world, and Nigeria cannot be left out in this regard. I'm seeing one, Mr. Lamin. Our time is fast spent. On this note, I remain your anchor until I see you next week. Remain blessed. Thank you.
CITN Taxation and You program, as approved by Council of CITN, is a monthly 1-hour live program on Zoom platform and also broadcast on YouTube. The program has benefited stakeholders within the country's tax arena, bridging knowledge gaps for both members and general public. It has covered key areas such as CITN activities, taxation, fiscal policy, tax legislation, and economic matters. Throughout the year, various experts in tax practice, administration, and academia were invited to address the themes, leading to a consistent rise in participation. This has made the program not only interactive, but also educational. Looking ahead to 2025, the program promises to be more educative and inclusive as we will continue to explore emerging and trending issues in taxation, finance, and economic matters. To sustain this educative and interactive program, the program is open for sponsorship. For sponsorship details, please contact the Head of Corporate Communication, Dr. Kemi Oluwagbami,